I knew something was wrong before the siren started. My name's Evan, 32, HVAC tech out of Columbus, Ohio. I rent the upstairs of a split level that smells faintly like old carpet and microwave popcorn because the guy downstairs burns popcorn twice a week. I've got a 5-year-old son named Mason who lives with his mom across town, and a situationship that's gone on 6 months longer than either of us will admit. Her name's Danny, bartender, Sundays off. We're not a couple, except when we are. I pay child support on time. I keep my toolbox sorted, and I don't usually scare easy. This morning, though, even the coffee tasted off. Not stale, just wrong. On a normal Thursday, I hit the Waffle House on Broad for a Texas bacon patty melt to go. The cook with the sleeve tattoo usually flips it my way, says, "Stay cool, HVAC," and I tell him I'm doing my best. Today, the parking lot had a military van tucked into the corner, like it didn't want to be noticed. No markings, just a matte green and a couple of antennas, like porcupine quills. Inside, the cook wasn't at the grill. A kid, maybe 19, tried to smile while a woman in a red shirt dabbed her mouth with a napkin and left it with a tiny brown smear, like she'd bit her lip hard. It wasn't lipstick. I don't normally notice that kind of thing, but the napkin stuck in my head like a thumbtack. I skipped breakfast and told myself I'd grab a burrito later. At my first service call, a retired teacher named Mrs. Donnelly asked me to keep my shoes on because her son was immuno-something, then forgot what the word was and laughed too long. The blower motor was fine. She just hadn't changed her filter in probably a year. While I swapped it, she coughed from the hallway. Not a smoker's cough. Sharp and wet. Then the sound of something hitting tile. I came out, and there was a small splash of red on her floor. She looked embarrassed, like I'd caught her dropping a wine glass, and kept saying, "Allergies. Sorry, allergies." I cleaned it up because I couldn't stand looking at it, and she kept thanking me and pressed a butterscotch into my palm like I was 8. Driving to the next job, I noticed more green vans. One at a self-storage place, one outside the urgent care, another tucked behind a Kroger next to the loading dock. You can convince yourself of anything when you want to get through your day. National Guard drill, I told myself. Some event at the stadium. Whatever. Then people started acting like they didn't know where to look. A guy in a suit stood on a corner, staring at the crosswalk light even though it was green, like he'd never seen one work. 2 high school girls on scooters moved fast down the sidewalk, one crying while the other kept saying, "I won't leave you, I won't leave you," in the tone of someone trying to convince themselves. I texted Danny, "You at work?" She usually sends a picture of something dumb in the bar's walk-in. Last week it was a smiley face made of limes. Today, nothing. By noon, my phone had the spinning wheel. AT&T just hung there. My group chat with the other techs, me, Ro, and Big Mike, stopped mid-argument about the Buckeyes QB and never picked up again. I called my ex to check on Mason. Straight to voicemail. I told myself her battery died, even though she's one of those people who lives at 80% and carries a charger like a priest with a rosary. At 1:30, the news started contradicting itself. The radio said there was a chemical spill on the west side. Twitter said it was a riot near the hospital. Facebook said it was drill day for emergency responders, and everyone should stay calm. A mom on Nextdoor posted a Ring cam clip of a man stumbling in circles on her porch and asked if it was drugs. 10 comments later, it turned into an argument about property taxes. Alerts popped and disappeared so fast I started to feel carsick, parked, and threw up in a Speedway trash can while a clerk locked the door from the inside and shook his head at me like I was the problem. I wiped my mouth and realized my hand was shaking. I drove to the bar where Danny works because it's what I do when I don't know what else to do. The street was wrong. It should have been lunch rush, contractors grabbing burgers, nurses grabbing salads, the regular with the cowboy hat who plays Keno all day. But it looked like after a snowstorm, when everyone hunkers down but doesn't want to admit it yet. Inside, the jukebox was frozen mid-song. The usually steady clink of glass had a nervous edge to it. Too fast, bottles being wiped in circles that made no progress. Danny was at the far end, hair up, sleeves rolled. She looked at me, then at the TV, then back at me in a way that said nothing and everything. On the screen, A local anchor tried to smile and mispronounced quarantine twice. "You good?" I asked, trying to make my voice normal. "Define good," she said. "Not joking. Have you heard from your sister?" Her sister lives in Cleveland and overshares memes. "No," she glanced at her phone on the bar. "Calls keep dropping. Texts go through with that little maybe check mark, and then they don't." "Power's still on," I said, like that meant something. "Yeah," she said. "For now." A guy at the other end coughed, and it wasn't a normal cough. It sounded like it hurt all the way through him. He stood up too fast, knocked his stool over, and left without paying. Nobody chased him for the tab. There's a feeling you get when a storm's coming. Not metaphor, just the ordinary Midwestern thing where the pressure changes and your teeth ache. That's what I felt. It lived in the back of my head. I thought about Mason's dinosaur pajamas and his small hand slipping into mine when we cross parking lots. The serious way he says 10-4 when I tell him to hold on tight. I told myself to stop being dramatic. Do your job. Finish your route. Turn in your paperwork. I left the bar and told Danny to text me if she needed anything. She looked like she wanted to say more, then didn't. At 3, I rolled up to a townhouse for a compressor swap. The HOA had posted a sign about keeping dogs leashed and trash cans pulled in by midnight, as if rules were the only thing holding the world together. The customer, a guy in gym shorts and an Ohio State hoodie, didn't answer until the 3rd knock. When he did, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not rot, like a meat cooler after a fuse blows. He kept blinking slowly, like his eyes were dry. "You good?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Yeah," he said, the word dragging. "Come in." I didn't want to, and I can't explain why, not really, except that the hairs on my arms were trying to stand up under my long sleeves. He started talking about the condenser while rubbing his neck, the way people rub a place that hurts, but they don't want to admit it. He coughed into his elbow, and there was a wet sound that made my stomach clench. I said I needed to grab a part from the truck. I stepped outside and kept stepping. I wrote reschedule on the work order and stuck it in his mailbox because I didn't want to knock again. On the way back down the row of townhouses, I saw a smear of blood on a white vinyl fence. A long swipe, like someone's hand dragged while they walked. I took a picture out of habit, document everything, and then felt stupid for doing it. Who was I going to show? The HOA. At 4:13, my phone shrieked. Not the usual Amber Alert tone. The emergency alert system cut through everything, even the dead data, and the whole street came to a stop the way people stop for a funeral procession. I held the phone in my palm and read, "Emergency. Zombies breaking into homes tonight. Secure doors and windows. Avoid contact with infected." This was not a movie word, not the one officials use. Zombies. The kind of word you laugh at unless your mouth is too dry. There was a second alert. Stay indoors after sunset. Do not engage. Expect power/communication outages. The message blinked, then vanished, then came back. Screens across the street lit up in different hands. A woman started crying. A guy shouted for someone named Kenny to get inside. I could hear 3 dogs barking in 3 different houses. The barking you only hear on July 4th. My first stupid thought was, I don't have enough screws. The second was Mason. I called my ex again. Voicemail. I called her mom. Voicemail. I called the daycare she uses sometimes. The number rang, and then a recorded voice said, "This mailbox is full." And I stared at my steering wheel and felt something in me harden. I couldn't reach him. I couldn't get to him in rush hour traffic, with people losing their minds. If I got stuck on the freeway when night hit, I would be the idiot on the news. The only thing I could do was make the place I slept harder to get into. I drove home too fast. A patrol car blasted past me and then slowed suddenly, changed its mind, and turned down a side street. A green van rolled through a stop sign, like rules didn't apply anymore. At a light, a man in camouflage waved people into a Walgreens, said they had water, then disappeared inside. The sky had that late September look where the light goes gold, and you can feel the dark waiting its turn. My apartment isn't much, but it's mine. The upstairs has 1 good door and 3 old windows, you could probably lift out with a putty knife. I hauled my tool bags inside, locked the door, then unlocked it and slid the deadbolt, then locked it again like that would help. I dragged the heavy dresser from the bedroom and jammed it under the knob. I took the dining chairs and wedged them between the door and the wall like braces. The downstairs guy, Pete, yelled up, "Everything okay?" And I said, "Just being careful." He said, "Yeah," like he wanted to believe me. He's a night shift janitor at the mall and thinks expired cereal is a good deal if it's 2 for 1. I went to the windows. The latches are jokes. I screwed in small plates I'd bought months ago and never installed because renters always plan to fix things tomorrow. I cut a couple of plywood squares I'd been keeping from a job. Don't ask why I had them. Techs keep weird stuff. And screwed them over the lowest panes. It looked ridiculous and perfect. I taped the seams with duct tape because it made me feel like I was doing something, even if it was nothing. I stuck towels at the base to block drafts, then realized I was treating it like a storm and laughed in a way that didn't sound like me. I filled the bathtub because some hurricane article said to do that. I dug through the pantry and found canned chili, beans, stale crackers, peanut butter, a bag of coffee, and 10 packets of dinosaur fruit snacks Mason forgot last weekend. I counted batteries. I checked the flashlight. I took a kitchen knife, decided it looked brave but dumb, and put it down. I pulled my old aluminum softball bat out of the hall closet, the one with the dent from when Big Mike and I won the Summer League, and set it next to the couch. I turned the TV on and watched the same footage on every channel. Shaky phone videos of people staring at people who weren't right. A woman banging her head against a glass door, slow and steady. A teenager biting his own hand and not reacting. A man walking into traffic like it was a hallway and cars swerving around him until one didn't. "Are you there?" Danny texted. "Just that." "Home," I wrote, barricading like an idiot. "Not an idiot," she wrote. "I'm coming over." "No. Stay with your roommates." They left. One's at her boyfriend's. One's at her mom's in Zanesville. It's just me. "We don't know what this is," I wrote. "You come here. You might bring it with you." She took a long time to answer. When the 3 dots finally popped up, I felt my chest loosen for the first time all day. Then the dots went away. Then they came back. Then they stopped again. She finally wrote, "I'm still on my scooter from work. I'll be there in 15. "Don't," I typed. "Please." She sent a picture instead, the view from her handlebars, half the city moving, half pretending not to. In the distance, something that might have been smoke. She wrote, "I don't want to be alone." I looked at my door. The dresser would make it hard to get in fast. I thought about Mason, about keeping myself alive for him, about being boring and safe, and not making dumb choices. I thought about Danny sitting in my living room, her knees curled under her, watching bad Netflix with the commentary track on, because she likes when people explain how things were made. I thought about the emergency alert, zombies breaking into homes tonight. That word, not infected, not looters, zombies. If the government says that word out loud, we are past the phase where being polite helps. The sun hit the roofline across the street and slid behind it. My living room dimmed in a way that felt like a door closing. Somewhere down the block, a dog started screaming, not barking, then cut off like a switch. My hands felt thick. I moved the dresser, dragged it just far enough so I could get the door open if I had to. I tucked the chairs against the wall so I could ram them back into place fast. I stood in the small square of space and listened. It started quick, not like rain, more like the sound of 1,000 people testing their doorknobs at the same time. Handles clicked, metal scraped wood. A voice yelled, "Hey," and then "Hey," and then help in a way that didn't sound like TV. My building shifted like an old man clearing his throat. Pete pounded on the ceiling from below, 3 times in a code we'd never agreed on. I texted him, "You good?" and got nothing back. I cracked the door and heard footsteps on the stairs. Normal ones are heel-toe, heel-toe. These sounded like shoes without feet in them. Heavy, then light, then heavy again, as if whoever owned them was trying to remember how to use them. Something hit the downstairs door. Not a knock, Not a shoulder. A full-body throw. Wood flexed. The stairs complained. I shut my door and slid the deadbolt. Evan. A voice. Too close. Danny. I moved the dresser and the chairs with a speed I wouldn't have believed I had. I opened up just enough for her to squeeze through. She slammed into me with a scooter helmet and breath like she'd run a mile and hands that didn't want to let go. I almost didn't make it, she said into my shoulder. They're in the Walgreens. They climbed the pharmacy counter, Evan. They don't move right. They keep going even when they hit things. Behind her, movement on the landing. A shadow that belonged to a body not sure where its joints were. Danny pushed the door, and I pushed with her. It clicked, and we slid the dresser back, while something on the other side pressed at the handle like it had all night. The knob jiggled, then rattled, then stopped. We stood there, two idiots holding furniture like it was a shield, breathing like we just want to sprint no one asked us to run. My phone buzzed once and went black. The TV froze on the anchor's face mid-blink. The light from outside dimmed another notch and took the edges of the room with it. Somewhere in the building, glass broke. Somewhere else, someone prayed loud and sloppy. Another alert tried to come through, stuttered, and died. We sat on the floor with our backs to the dresser. Danny pulled her knees to her chest. I counted how many screws I'd driven and thought about where I'd put the bat. I wanted to call my son, so bad my teeth hurt. I tried to picture his face like a shield, and it almost worked until I heard the slow, patient scratch at the wood. People talk about slow escalation, but this wasn't slow. It was a lid coming off. All day the pot rattled, and now the kitchen was steam. You want me to be poetic? I can't. The reality is this. It was getting dark, and the wrong things were outside our door, and the right people were out there too, caught in it, and I couldn't help them. I could only pile furniture and breathe and wait. Something on the other side of the door leaned in, long and steady, like testing the grain. Then a second something joined it. The wood moved a fraction of an inch and stopped. The bolt groaned. I put my palms against the dresser and pushed back, and Danny did too. And in that small act we chose a side. Not heroic or brave, just the side of still being here. Are we staying? She asked, voice small and not like her. For tonight, I said. We stay. Okay, she said, and closed her eyes for 1 second too long. A hand slid under the door, just the tips of fingers, pale and gray, searching blind. We both stared at it, not breathing, as it felt along the gap, and then withdrew, slow and greedy, like it had learned something. The sun was gone. The rules were changing, and it was only the first night. The dresser was still wedged under the door when the first real hit came. Not the testing scrape we'd heard before. This was a slam, shoulder or skull or something heavier, that rattled the frame and shook a picture off the wall. Danny grabbed my arm before I even processed it. Another slam came right after, and another, and the hollow apartment door groaned like it didn't know how long it could hold. Get away from it, I whispered, pulling her back toward the couch. My bat was leaning there, and I picked it up because my hands didn't know what else to do. Outside, feet scraped. Not marching, not running. Sliding. Pausing. Starting again. It sounded like a crowd trying to remember how to be a crowd. A breathless yell from the street made both of us jump. Then a crash of glass somewhere below. Pete's place. I wanted to yell down, but I knew better. Instead, I grabbed my phone and typed, "You okay?" But the screen stayed black. Dead. I shoved it in my pocket and felt the ridiculous urge to apologize to the dead battery. Danny was shaking her head, whispering to herself. "They're not supposed to be smart," she said. "They're just supposed to wander." "You don't know that." "Movies," she started, then cut herself off, eyes darting toward the door. Another hit, then silence, then the sound of nails. No, not nails, fingertips, dragging down the outside like someone memorizing the grain. Slow and patient. The hairs at the base of my skull prickled, so hard it hurt. We backed deeper into the apartment. I flipped off the living room light. Our breaths sounded too loud. For a second, the scratching stopped. Then a new sound joined, with splitting downstairs. Pete. I crept to the window, peeled a corner of the tape towel, and risked one eye out. The street was nightmare quiet except for a handful of figures moving wrong, heads cocked, arms heavy. A woman in pajama pants stumbling toward a mailbox, her mouth working silently. A guy with no shirt but with a neck wound black and shiny, turning in place like a compass needle. Farther down, two uniforms, cops or maybe guard, were wrestling with one of them. One fired point blank. The thing dropped, twitched, got up again. My gut turned to ice. Behind me, Danny gasped. I spun. She was at the bedroom door, staring at the balcony slider. Just glass, no bars, no backup. One of them was there, pressed flat, palms on the pane like a kid at an aquarium. Its face smeared the glass, nose wrong, lips split. It was breathing fog patches, and it was watching us. Back, I barked. We both stumbled into the hallway. I wanted to lock the bedroom, but didn't want to get closer. The thing's hands were spreading wider, testing seams. Suddenly a pop, not a gun, the glass giving just enough to sound. We bolted for the kitchen. I yanked a heavy oak chair and ran back, heart doing double time. Slammed the chair under the slider handle. The thing hissed, I swear, and vanished sideways. My stomach dropped. I don't know what's worse, seeing them or not seeing them. Then pounding, but not at the slider. The front door. Harder now. Rhythmic, faster. They knew the weak spot. Attic, Danny whispered. There's no. I started, then remembered the crawl hatch in the hallway ceiling. I'd shoved Christmas junk up there once. My ladder's in the closet. I sprinted for it, grabbed the ladder, almost tripped on the bat, set it up shaking. Danny scrambled up first. She's lighter. I shoved the bat up, then hauled myself, just as the first bottom hinge on the door screamed. We slid the panel over behind us and went still. The attic is nothing but insulation and forgotten boxes, but it's height, and right now height felt like armor. Through the thin ceiling we heard the door finally go. That ugly, dry wood break. Something came in. Footsteps, too many, searching. Danny's hand found mine in the dark, cold and shaking but solid. Below, they moved slow, deliberate. Things bumped, the dresser, the couch, the bat maybe. Something sniffed. No, that's crazy, but the air changed. My own breathing tried to betray me. One of them made a sound like clearing a throat full of water. We stayed absolutely still. I thought about Mason, about how I promised to keep him safe even from across town, and I felt the smallest, stupidest relief that he wasn't here to see me crouched and shaking in my own attic. A crash in the kitchen. Metal on tile, maybe my pots. Then the voice. I don't know how to explain it. It was Danny's voice. Or almost. A perfect wrongness. Evan, it said. Soft. Questioning. It's me. Come out. Danny clamped her own hands over her mouth, so fast I heard her teeth click. It said again, Evan. Help me. That was worse than any banging. Worse than any shuffling. The idea of one of them knowing my name, or copying her, or just trying. I squeezed her hand till my knuckles cracked. Something thumped the ceiling under us, like it knew we were up here. Then silence. Minutes, maybe an hour, we didn't move. The only sound was my heartbeat and the occasional creak of boards somewhere far too close. Finally, a door slammed below. Maybe the building's main entrance. Then quiet returned. Quiet like snow, too deep, wrong. I waited 5 whole minutes before whispering. We stay up here till morning. Danny nodded fast. And then, because the world loves bad timing, the emergency alert buzzed alive in my pocket. I nearly screamed. I grabbed it, praying the sound hadn't carried. The screen glowed weak but alive. Emergency update, locked doors. Avoid attics/upper floors. Zombies can climb. Then it went black again. Something brushed against the hatch from below. Lightly. Once. Twice. Then nothing. I killed the phone screen. My chest felt like it might implode. Danny's breath hitched, but she didn't make a sound. We just sat in the dark, listening to the house we didn't own breathe under us, and to the city outside, a city changing its shape, room by room. Tonight wasn't about waiting them out. Tonight was about surviving the knowledge that there's no real safe, and that whatever those things are, they know enough to knock, enough to climb, enough to copy. The first night, I thought we could just barricade and hold. Now I know better. They're coming in, and they're learning. The sound came again, a faint tap on the hatch. Not pounding this time. Testing. Danny's nails dug into my arm hard enough to hurt. My breath tried to come out too loud. I forced it slow. Another tap. Then silence. Then wood fibers complaining, a slow groan. They weren't leaving. They were listening. I looked around the black attic, mind scanning every dumb tool I'd ever stored. Boxes of holiday junk, old AC filters, Mason's baby swing I never tossed. My aluminum bat lay next to me, but swinging it up here would be suicide. One miss, and we'd both tumble through the hatch. Danny leaned close, whispered so soft I almost didn't catch it. They're waiting. I nodded. My throat felt glued shut. We sat like that until my legs went numb. Then, from below, another voice. A man's this time, clear as a door-to-door salesman. Hey, anyone up there? We're safe. Danny's eyes went huge. I shook my head violently. Whispered, don't. She mouthed, what if it's real? I mouthed back, it's not. Because the cadence was off. Flat where a human plea trembles. Too calm. Seconds later the same voice tried again, but this time it sounded like me. Open up, it's Evan. I felt every hair on my arms rise. Danny clamped her hands over her mouth again. We didn't move. Minutes bled by. Then quiet. Finally, a single, sharp crack from somewhere outside. Gunfire maybe, and rapid footsteps retreating down the stairs. A door slammed. Then true silence. We waited long enough to hurt. When the sky outside the vent started shifting from black to that pale pre-dawn gray, I let myself crawl forward and inched the hatch just enough to peek. The apartment looked ransacked but empty. My door hung loose, the dresser shoved aside. Front windows shattered, curtains fluttering. No sign of movement. I whispered to Danny, we move. Now. We slid down, knees shaking, bat first. I closed the hatch behind us on instinct, as if that would help. The living room was a disaster. Couch overturned, pictures smashed, kitchen stripped of anything with smell. And on the wall, scrawled in something brown-red, one word, tonight. My stomach tried to climb out of my throat. Danny grabbed my sleeve. We have to leave. Daylight, I said. Now or never. We grabbed what we could. A backpack with cans, batteries, water, the bat. I found my work gloves and shoved them on because suddenly I couldn't imagine touching a door without them. Stairs down were littered with broken plaster and pieces. I didn't look close. Pete's door was wide open, apartment gutted. No sign of Pete. Outside, the street looked hollow. Cars jammed haphazardly, doors flung open. Sun just edging up. Enough light to see bodies, some still, some twitching faint. I kept us moving quick but quiet, scanning everything. 2 blocks down, an SUV sat with the engine running and no one in it. We didn't debate long. Danny slid behind the wheel. Keys were there. I climbed shotgun, bat across my knees. Where? She asked, voice shredded. Mason, I said. She nodded once, stomped the gas. We drove through a city that looked raided by nightmares. Storefronts smashed, alarms wailing until batteries died, stoplights blinking useless red. Shapes darted and froze at edges of vision, but didn't chase daylight. Not yet. Halfway across the bridge, my phone flickered to life, just long enough to spit one text. CDC. Shelter. Do not travel. Homes breached. Road unsafe. Then it died for good. Too late. We were already committed. We passed another green military van sideways in the road, doors hanging open. Inside, no people. Just drag marks leading away. Danny's hands were shaking on the wheel. I wanted to tell her she was doing great, but the words stuck. I kept my eyes on every rooftop, every alley. When we finally turned onto the street, where my ex lives, my chest locked. The houses looked intact, blinds drawn, cars still there. Hope flared hot and fast. Then I saw Mason's tricycle in the yard, overturned and wet with something dark that wasn't rain. I made her stop. I stepped out slow, bat ready, voice shaking as I called his name. The front door was cracked. Inside was too quiet, and from somewhere deep in the house came the smallest sound, not a moan, not a hiss. Daddy. Every nerve in my body fired at once. Relief, terror, hope, dread, all crashing together. I looked back at Danny. She shook her head, whispered, "Evan, don't." But I already was. Because there's no barricade strong enough when your kid calls for you. I pushed the door wider and stepped into the dark. Behind me, Danny cursed under her breath, raised the bat, and followed. The hallway smelled like copper and cereal. "Buddy," I whispered. A shuffle from the kitchen, tiny, off rhythm. And then Mason stepped into view, pajamas torn, eyes huge and wet, lips split, hands empty. He ran to me, slammed into my chest, sobbing. "It's not Mommy, Daddy. It's not Mommy." I wrapped him up, heart about to explode. Over his shoulder, I saw the kitchen doorway and what was left of his mom, standing, swaying, face pale and wrong, teeth red. It turned toward us, slow and deliberate, and smiled with no reason to. I grabbed Mason tighter and yelled at Danny, "Back car now." She didn't hesitate. She swung, one clean arc, and connected. The thing's head snapped sideways, but didn't drop. It kept coming. We ran. Out the door, down the steps, sprinting like animals. Mason screaming, Danny panting, me not breathing. Into the SUV, slammed doors, engine roaring. Something hit the back bumper as we tore away. In the mirror, his mom, it running. Too fast for what it should be. It stumbled but didn't stop. Then others appeared from houses, shadows spilling into daylight that should have burned them back, but didn't. We sped until my arms shook and my chest felt hollow. Only when we hit the interstate, empty, dead silent, did we stop. Mason clung to me, hiccuping sobs. Danny stared straight ahead, knuckles white on the wheel. None of us spoke for a long time. Finally Mason whispered, "Where's home now?" I looked back toward the smoke rising from Columbus and knew the answer was gone. I told him the only truth left. We drive. We stay together. We don't let them in. Danny nodded, eyes wet but hard. Somewhere behind us, the world we knew was gone. Ahead, highways, empty towns, who knows? The rules had changed overnight. The word zombie was real, and it could wear any face, even one you love. I held my son closer and felt the wheels shake under Danny's hands as we rolled into the unknown.